Hi, I'm Ed Ronayne, the CTO of Strencom. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a scenario I see our engineering team deploy almost every other day. That is, two public-facing web servers deployed in geographically dispersed data centers with an automated failover and our load balancing between these data centers. For the demonstration, we're going to deploy an Apache web server in a Tier 2 data center in Cork and a second web server, Apache as well, in a Tier 3 data center in Dublin. Once these have been deployed, we will then deploy a Citrix NetScaler. This NetScaler will run as an appliance in the cloud and is going to manage the connections to these web servers. So I'm logged in here to the Strencom Cloud Server portal. This dashboard gives me an idea of the amount of resources I've already deployed inside my virtual data center, and when we look at the end, we'll see that these resources have changed. So it's a virtual data center we're going to deploy. First, we're going to deploy Cork. So we're going to call it Cork www, and we're going to select the Tier 2 data center in Cork, so i.e. O2 Cork Tier 2. And we want to drop these machines into an ESX environment. So that's going to go off into the back end and orchestrate those cloud resources for me. Next, we're going to create Dublin. So we're going to deploy exactly the same resources in Dublin. Here, a small CentOS machine, which is enough to create our LAMP stack. We'll save the machine and we'll edit the networking. Again, adding the public IP address that we had consumed earlier under networking. So again, under public, it was 210.60 was the IP address we grabbed for it. I'm going to save that, and I'm just going to change the default gateway on the server. And clean up the private network card. Hit save. We're going to close that, and we're going to deploy it. Again, pricing is the same up in the Dublin data center as Cork, so we're going to accept that pricing, and we can close this virtual appliance. So when we go back to my dashboard here, I can now see all of my virtual appliances I have running inside my cloud, and I can see that two of them are spinning away, spooling up new resources. So I'm going to pause the recording for a second. It should only take 2 or 3 minutes to deploy, but we'll pause for the moment. So now that those two machines have deployed, we're going to log into each one of them and set them up as a web server. So we'll start in Dublin. We'll go into the virtual appliance. We'll click on our newly deployed machine and click on the eye. We'll fire up a little Java applet. That brings us directly to the console of the server. So I'm going to skip these setup tasks and go right ahead and configure the web server from the command line. So first thing, we'll install Apache. This is going to pull it from the nearest mirror, which is normally HEnet. I'm going to say yes. And that's Apache installed. So we're going to set Apache to start up automatically on boot. And we're going to edit the firewall. To allow connections to the web server on port 80. So that's port 80 allowed on the web server. And one more thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off SE Linux on this machine. Ideally you'd put an exception in SE Linux, but for this demonstration I'm just going to disable it. And we can do that just by setting SE Linux to disabled. So now we have a functioning web server. We're going to give it a reboot in a minute for all those changes to take effect. We have a functioning web server, but we need to put some web content in it. So I am going to just put in a dummy index file. And it's simply going to say that this is a Dublin web server. And we're going to give that machine a reboot. You can see there's a standard BIOS to this, and it looks like any other kind of real physical Linux machine shutting down and booting up. It's no different running in the cloud. So while that's rebooting, I'm going to go off and configure the other Cork-based virtual data center, and we'll see you back here in a second. So we now have two web servers configured, and we'll just give them a quick tickle from the outside to make sure that they're web accessible. So the Dublin one was 77.107.210.60, and we can see we have content here that just states it's Dublin VDC web server. There's no real web content on these demo machines. And then down in Cork we had 77.107.213.30 and Cork VDC. So we have Dublin VDC running and we have Cork VDC running. Next step is we need to configure our NetScaler. I've pre-deployed it already because I need the MAC addresses to be consistent for licenses I'm about to apply. But you can see on first boot here when we go to the console of the NetScaler appliance, you can see that we need to do some manual configuration on it. It's not accepting all of the configuration from the portal. So it does want its IP address to be configured. So I've already assigned this machine an IP address of 77.107.210, 77.107.210.30, and subnet mask is /24. And the gateway for that subnet is 77.107.210.1. So these are things we'd normally be setting inside the portal. But here we're setting them on the console of the NetScaler to allow us to install the licenses. So the NetScaler is going to take a minute or two to boot up. And when it's ready, we're going to connect to a web interface on it, upload some licenses, and start configuring the load balancing. So the NetScaler has booted up and we're now ready to connect to its web interface. So we can do this by opening another browser tab, 77.107.210.30. And I've previously logged into it, so it just gave an error message for that. So we'll log in with the default username and password of nsroot. And we'll just ask us to confirm the configuration. The NetScaler needs a second IP address in a network. This is going to be its service IP, or the IP address it's going to use to connect to the web servers. So we have 77.107.210.31 for this. And again, that's /24. We're going to continue this, and now it's going to ask us for a license. So I've already downloaded a license for this appliance. The licenses are tied to the MAC addresses of the appliance. So I've already downloaded a license. For this appliance. This is the guy here, I think. We'll continue, we're done. Now it's going to want to reboot because it needs to activate the license. So we're going to give this a few minutes to reboot. Okay, so our NetScaler has finished booting and we're about to log back in. We should now see the license features on the left-hand side of the screen. So you can see traffic management is now licensed on the box, and we will be able to create our load balancing rules. So the first thing we need to do for load balancing is we'll program up the servers first. So under load balancing, we'll go to servers. We'll add a new server and we'll call this www.cork, and its IP address was 77.107.213.30. And we'll make another server, www.dublin, and its IP address was 210.60. So 210.60 was our Dublin web server, so we're going to create that. So we can see now we have two servers created. Next thing we need to do is we'll create the services on these servers. So it's similar to the way we created the servers. For each server, we're going to create a web server object. We just need to wait for this applet to load so we can apply the services against the servers. So the first service, we'll call it Cork Web Service. It's served off the server www.cork and it's running on port 80. Now, what we need to figure out is how we're going to monitor the server and how we know when the server is stopped working. So we're going to add a HTTP monitor. I'm going to hit create on this and I'll just show you what that will do. So you can see we have a Cork web service now. Its state is up and it's on port 80. I'm going to drag in the Cork web server here and we're going to have a look at the logs of the Apache. So we can see here there's been a number of GET requests to the server. This is us earlier in the video, just checking to see that the web service